There's just some people out there who like to complain more often than anything. Marcus Smith, the head of Speedway Motorsports, pushes back against criticism of last night's NASCAR All-Star race. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove, back in the studio. Drove 4 hours across the state this morning, but we are back, and during my drive, I stopped at a Buc-ee's, of course. I pulled out my phone to see some of the early morning, next day reactions to last night's debacle of a race. And I see that Marcus Smith, the head of Speedway Motorsports, effectively the head of Texas Motor Speedway, went on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio Channel 90 and in many ways defended the All-Star race and pushed back against fans who said it was a bad show. I didn't hear the full clip, but Jeff Gluck from The Athletic relayed a few important quotes, and that's what I want to react to here this afternoon. First and foremost, Gluck tweets that Smith sounded reluctant to move the All-Star race from Texas and said they sold more tickets this year. Quote, "There's just some people out there who like to complain more often than anything. If you talk to the fans who were there, they had a great time." He went on, "When we had it in Charlotte, we had some detractors who would always say, 'Why is it in Charlotte?' We move it and people say, 'Let's put it back in Charlotte.' I found nobody likes change and nobody likes anything to stay the same. You can't make everybody happy." Again, that's from Marcus Smith, the president and CEO of Speedway Motorsports, the parent company that owns Texas Motor Speedway and a wide variety of other tracks. There's a lot there to react to. Let's start with his comment that fans who were at the race had a good time. Fans at the track almost always have a good time, and Texas Motor Speedway, to their credit, had plenty of entertainment outside the track. I saw more vendors, more sponsor booths than I've seen there in recent years. They had plenty of stuff to do inside the track. I saw more people with infield passes than I've ever seen at Texas, all packed in to the garage for that Blake Shelton concert. And the race, while not consistently entertaining, still had several get out of your seat moments to keep the crowd energized. The crowd looked better than I'd seen in recent years. Traffic leaving the track was the worst it's been since at least 2019. So I think he is right when he says they sold more tickets than they did for last year's All-Star race. But that's where things get difficult. Granted, I don't know every fine detail of SMI's budget year to year, but I don't think selling 10,000 more tickets outweighs the massive wave of criticism and negativity this event faced from the outside, and in some cases even from the inside, from teams and competitors. Very few were satisfied by the on-track product, and many believe this event would flourish better in a different market, a different venue, especially a different racetrack. It's difficult, like I said, because from what I can tell, SMI has little incentive to make any major changes to Texas Motor Speedway or even to the All-Star race at this point. Talking about Texas Motor Speedway specifically, the track's only 25 years old, and it's still one of the most impressive major facilities in the country. It's huge, it's expensive, the infrastructure's in pretty good shape outside of Big Hoss TV and obviously the racing surface itself. They have an agreement with NASCAR to host 2 races at Texas Motor Speedway a year. And I don't see SMI trying to back out of that agreement as long as the track is still succeeding from a business standpoint. The state of Texas is a huge economy, and it's a huge brand. There are plenty of Texas-based and Texas-adjacent companies that see this racetrack as their NASCAR investment. So as long as SMI is okay with their bottom line, I don't see them making any major changes to Texas Motor Speedway. It would be expensive. There's no guarantee any changes would work. We saw the most recent changes in 2017 have led to the problems we have now. So there's not much incentive for them to make any major expensive changes to the racetrack. And again, regarding the All-Star race, SMI has an agreement with NASCAR to host the All-Star race. Where could they realistically move the All-Star race to, if not Texas? SMI owns a bunch of intermediate tracks. They own Sonoma, no. New Hampshire, no. Bristol, they tried it, not a huge market. I don't know if they'll go back and do another All-Star race there. Could they bring the All-Star race to Atlanta? Super Speedway? Maybe make one of their 2 dates the All-Star race? But then you're still left with 2 Texas Motor Speedway dates that are now 400 or 500 miles in length. Like I said, there's just not a lot of incentive from SMI's perspective to make any major changes to Texas or the All-Star race at this point. But I still have some hope. NASCAR as an industry has been very aggressive recently. They've done things that 5-10 years ago I wouldn't have said were possible. Between the new car, the clash at the Coliseum, the Charlotte Roval was a new and exciting idea at the time and is still held up to this day. NASCAR has seen the needle move when they've taken bold risks, like the Clash, like the Roval, like the next gen car, like 2020 when they were the first major sport back in action after the pandemic. I'm confident that NASCAR's bold and aggressive direction may salvage this race, may save this race from SMI. They may be able to save SMI from themselves, perhaps is a better way of putting it. Again, the only praise I've seen for last night's race came from fans who attended in person, and even then, most of the praise was for events outside of the racing itself. Drivers, media, fans watching at home, heck, even Mike Joy at the end sounded a little burnt out. They've all been critical, and I might talk about this more in a video later this week, but Adam Stern posted an article in Sports Business Journal about Denny Hamlin and featured this really interesting Denny Hamlin quote when talking about leadership in the sport. Hamlin said, "It's very hard to convince dinosaurs they must eat differently." Going back to Marcus Smith's quotes, he's talking about Texas, he's talking about Charlotte. Marcus Smith and SMI need to think bigger, think bolder than Texas and Charlotte Motor Speedway. Get even more bullish about Nashville Fairgrounds, a track that's mostly under your control. North Wilkesboro Speedway, create a grand made-for-TV event over there. TV's where most of your money comes from anyways. Promote your own stadium race in a major market. It will take bold, risky ideas to make the All-Star race a success once again. And it's painful because even though he's defending this race and saying things like, oh, we sold more tickets and, most fans just like to complain and whine on social media. Deep down, I think he knows Texas Motor Speedway is tremendously flawed. In fact, his company the last few years has done nearly everything they can to get away from tracks like Texas Motor Speedway. They've gone out and bought Dover. They're trying to renovate Nashville Fairgrounds. They're talking about bringing trucks to North Wilkesboro once again. They turned a Charlotte date into a road course. They've leased COTA 2 years in a row. Marcus Smith used to have Eddie Gossage here to take the blame and take the heat for all things Texas Motor Speedway and its reconfiguration. Now Eddie Gossage is gone, and Marcus Smith has to answer more questions himself. And I just don't think he even believes all the words coming out of his mouth. Like, there's truth to what he said. I think they did sell more tickets. Fans that were there did have a good time. But like I said a few minutes ago, I don't think a few thousand extra tickets sold outweighs the massive amounts of criticism the industry has sent their way, that fans watching at home has sent their way. I just don't think those weigh out evenly. I think you do have to factor in the outside criticism considering there are millions watching at home on TV, and NASCAR, as much as they talk about the importance of attendance, they talk about TV ratings even more. Marcus Smith and SMI's complacency with just good enough, I think may be the end of the All-Star race before we know it. It's gonna take something bold to reinvigorate the All-Star race once again. Those are my final thoughts. I'm done talking about the All-Star race for at least the next few months. Until they announce next year's schedule, it sounds like Texas Motor Speedway is already tentatively planning to host the race again next year, which I guess after these comments from Marcus Smith, not surprising. But share your thoughts down in the comment section below. I've read many of your comments, the over 900 we've gotten on this morning's video already. But share your thoughts on Marcus Smith's comments explicitly. I try to read as many comments as I possibly can. I appreciate all of your support. That's gonna do it for this episode. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We talk NASCAR day in, day out, reacting to news, reacting to races, and much, much more. And as always, a big thank you to my tremendous Patreon supporters. I really appreciate your support. We'll be back later this week. Lots more to talk about, I'm sure. I mentioned that article about Denny Hamlin, some interesting stuff to unpack there. We gotta talk Kyle Busch and some more speculation around his future, and much, much more. I keep saying more, but there's always more here in the world of NASCAR. Indy 500 and Coke 600 this weekend. It's Memorial Day weekend. This is a big weekend of racing coming up. Lots to talk about between now and then. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next episode.